Hello, and welcome back to The Deep End. My name is Rhett Hoskinson. Like every great late-night show before us, The Deep End has finally figured out what the people really want: a straight white male host from Northwestern. We're in the thick of winter quarter, that lonely time of year where the only two words you know are snow and midterms. And pain. I guess that's 3 words. Silly me. That pain is made even worse by the fact that we are coming up on Valentine's Day. You know, the holiday named after Saint Valentine, a Catholic saint who was condemned to death by the Emperor of Rome and beheaded. And in honor of him, every Valentine's Day, people do beheaded. Anyway, when spirits are low this season, many look for ways to feel less lonely. And no, I'm not talking about office hours. I'm talking about romance. But what does that entail? Relationships, hooking up, hugging your pillow just a little bit closer? Turns out it gets complicated. Why can't you commit, Mr. Pillow? That brings us to the subject of tonight's episode, hookup culture. So what is hookup culture? Well, according to Dr. Alexandra Solomon, professor of Marriage 101 at Northwestern, hookup culture is defined as a zeitgeist that accepts and encourages casual sexual encounters, including one-night stands, which focus on physical intimacy without emotional bonding or longer-term commitment. For those of you who stopped listening after the word zeitgeist, hookup culture is like when you skip the dinner date and go straight to Deep End and chill. Stop making eye contact with me, it's weird. By the way, how cool is it that we have a class called Marriage 101? I think Northwestern should offer more courses that deal with the personal aspects of our lives, like Midlife Crisis 375, or when you're walking directly towards someone you know on Sheridan and you both see each other before you're close enough to say hi, so you have to pretend that you didn't see each other until you're at an appropriate distance. What is the appropriate distance? 202. In the Deep End survey of Northwestern students, 87.3% of respondents agreed that casual sexual encounters are the dominant sexual culture at Northwestern. Speaking of our survey, congratulations to the winners of our raffle, who will each receive a Starbucks gift card. RhettTheRhino@gmail.com and HoskinsonHottie@AOL.com. Thank you both for your contributions to our research. As a disclaimer, we'd like to mention that there are limitations to our survey. Only 362 students responded. The other ones were probably too busy banging. While our data obviously cannot be fully comprehensive, it can still hint at larger trends on campus. We also want to acknowledge that sexual violence is inextricably linked to hookup culture. We felt we could not give the topic the justice it deserves by covering it in this episode with the limited time we have. But it is crucial that we continue to have conversations about sexual assault on campus and, above all, that we believe and actively support survivors. We also want to establish that we are using hookup as a catch-all term. And by catch-all, that doesn't include the way boomer professors use the term hookup when saying, "Did you manage to hook up with the students in your study group last night?" Just 2 of them. Most survey respondents indicated that they believe the term hookup can encompass anything from making out to vaginal or anal sex. I just want to say that word again. Or as we like to call it, sticking it in the deep end. In fact, 16.75% of respondents indicated that they have never had oral, vaginal, or anal sex, while 26.5% of respondents have never had vaginal or anal sex. So, it's important to keep in mind that Northwestern students have had drastically different sexual experiences. Not everyone fucks like Rhett the Rhino, whoever he is. And that terms like sex and hookup can have different meanings to different people. Normally, we at the Deep End have a pretty structured thesis, but like sexuality, this episode is going to be pretty fluid, and rather than taking sides on any one issue, we'll be exploring a spectrum of opinions and topics surrounding hookup culture. So, without further ado, let's dive in. That's what she said! Let's start the way so many hookups do, with Greek life. Greek life. Like the Mansons, it's about family. 40% of our survey respondents had met a casual sexual partner at a Greek event, by far the most frequent place to meet such a partner. And to think, 0% of respondents met a casual sex partner at Evanston Public Library. Hey, EPL, maybe it's time for a rebrand. Evanston Public Library, that ass is due back in 2 weeks. Not only is hookup culture most visible at Greek events, members of Greek life are also 30% more likely to feel included in hookup culture than non-Greek affiliated students. It appears that, like Agamemnon's army during the siege of Troy, the Greeks are able to keep everyone else out. Boom! That's an Iliad reference, motherfucker. Who's spending too much time writing comedy and not enough time doing the assigned readings now, Mom? Don't worry, it's okay for me to call my mom a motherfucker. She doesn't have Facebook. Dumb motherfucker. I'm sorry, Mom. Having Greek life at the center of hookup culture reinforces a gendered power imbalance. Due to national restrictions, sororities are not allowed to host any events that serve alcohol. As Jaden Logan, the president of IFC, notes, this policy creates a space
where you don't really have any power, and then there's alcohol, and then there's like the expectation, like, oh, I have to like find someone to hook up with. It just kind of creates like not the safest or like best environment to like learn pretty much like how to do like how to like learn to be sexually active, but also how to like learn to like treat people in like a respectful and like responsible way.
In fact, an even less official Deep End survey found that the only frat house that girls feel comfortable in is the old Beta House, which is now just a dorm for McCormick students whose most social moment at Northwestern was asking the tech janitor where the L Wing is. Now let's talk about that thing that doesn't seem to exist at Northwestern. And no, I don't mean relationships. Let's talk about relationships. Oh, I guess I did mean relationships. Despite student perceptions, 32.6% of our survey respondents indicated they were currently in a relationship. But in a survey conducted within my relationship, only 50% of respondents said they were in a relationship. Mr. Pillow, you already met my parents. Why are you making this so difficult? And while most students felt that casual sex was Northwestern's dominant culture, 71.3% of respondents actually said their dream sexual lifestyle is being in a committed relationship, which explains why good old-fashioned commitment is the most popular category on Pornhub. So, if everyone wants to be in a relationship, why is no one in a relationship? Although, to be fair, monogamy is hard when and is literally in your DNA. But the truth is that casual sex can be draining and emotionally complicated for students. Dr. Solomon also wrote, "These days, committed couples seem to be the exception, at least at Northwestern, and my students are quite open about the emotional fallout they experience as a result. A landscape overrun with mindless and outwardly inconsequential hookups instead of relationships leaves them feeling like they're in a passive and reactive stance, adrift and insecure about love. It's a place of discomfort. Hooking up doesn't feel quite right, but committing to a relationship doesn't either." Wow, that hits home. Also, adrift and insecure, isn't that the sailing team's motto? In an interview with Vice, Dr. Lisa Wade, a professor at Occidental College, said it's that all people feel like they're supposed to engage in hookup culture. It's become the dominant and perhaps only way that students are supposed to engage sexually. There is pressure to participate in a system of casual sex only, with other options deemed backwards or pathetic or desperate. While the majority of Northwestern students seem to want to be in a committed relationship, the dominant culture of hooking up makes students who want to date feel like they're outliers, which in turn makes initiating a relationship seem riskier. Northwestern's dating scene is like one big middle school dance. There's two couples slow dancing in the middle, while everyone else is standing alone in a circle around them, not knowing where to put their hands. Northwestern stress culture may also be contributing to the reason why more students who want to be in a relationship aren't. Sam Burston, the student director of SHAPE, described Northwestern as
a high stress culture, high work culture, and a place where people naturally compartmentalize different aspects of their lives, whether that's work, schoolwork, jobs, friendships. So I think that leads to kind of having the hookup culture where people compartmentalize, sex.
It's true that Northwestern students have to compartmentalize everything when they're trying to balance so much. Most students are compartmentalizing their emotions and hookups. Meanwhile, CESP students are compartmentalizing their lunchboxes into their cubbies. Now, let's transition to talking about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me, about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. While it may seem riskier to openly express a desire to be in a committed relationship, there are some pretty good perks to good old-fashioned commitment. Our survey data shows that on a 5-point scale, where 1 is never and 5 is always, people reported an average of 2.97 for feeling pleasure and an average of 2.63 for achieving orgasm with casual, non-committed sexual partners. Meanwhile, for sexual encounters with romantic committed partners, the average feeling of pleasure was 4.42 and the average achievement of orgasm was 3.55. So students in committed relationships were significantly more likely to consistently experience both pleasure and orgasm. To put that scientifically, when two people love each other very much, they come way harder. And our survey results have scientific support. A study published in the American Sociological Review states that rates of orgasm and enjoyment increase dramatically between the first hookup and subsequent hookups, suggesting that partner-specific learning plays a role even in the absence of a long-term commitment. Obviously, you don't need to be in a relationship to have good sex, but open communication and familiarity with your partner can significantly improve your experience. But if we're going to talk about pleasure, we have to address the elephant in the room, or the elephant that the girls are pretending is in the room, because he's really trying his best. And you've got stuff to do later, so this needs to start wrapping up. The pleasure gap between relationships and casual hookups is worse when you're a woman. According to the same study from the American Sociological Review, both men and women reported that men are typically not concerned with women's pleasure in hookups, but both reported that men are very attentive to women's pleasure in relationships. Pleasure in a relationship is like having a dog. You know that when you get home, it's going to be at the door, excited to see you, and ready to do whatever it takes to make you happy. Pleasure from casual hookups is more like having a goldfish. You're not sure how long it's going to last, and you got it at the county fair. Just me? Okay. And those who can't find it at the county fair often turn to online dating apps like Tinder, Hinge, eHarmony, Bumble, Grindr, Cuffed, OkCupid, Coffee Meets Bagel, Badoo, Farmers Only, Scout, and Diaper Mates. Only one of those is fake, and it wasn't Diaper Mates. Diaper Mates is very, very real. In our survey, 59.4% of respondents said they had used an online dating app since coming to Northwestern, and 31.8% said they had met a casual sex partner that way. And while that sweet swipe of success can feel good, online dating can have a negative effect on student health. We've all been there, swiping through Tinder at 2 a.m. only to stumble upon an old flame. And that never feels good. In our interview with integrative therapist Dr. Heather Lofton, she explained that
with hookup culture, with online dating, rejection is very, very amplified right now. And that, again, the swipes, you could be swiping and hitting all the marks. I like this guy, I like that girl, this is perfect, but you're not getting any responses back. And that can certainly feel like a blow to one's sense of self and one's confidence in who they are and what they bring to the relationship table or even the hookup table. Am I desirable? Does this person want me? If not, what do I need to do in order to make myself feel wanted?
Now, I would make a joke here about how Northwestern students are already disappointed and embarrassed and suffering from low self-esteem, but much like my sugar daddy's package, that seems like low-hanging fruit. Can we get a graphic for that? It makes sense why dating apps are so popular. It's an easy way to meet potential sexual partners, and it can seem fairly low stakes. However, a reliance on dating apps can have a negative effect on your mental health. Now, I recognize that I am presenting this topic from a place of privilege as a straight, white, cis man. Given that our journalists have spent months investigating Northwestern's hookup culture from a variety of angles, I want to pass the baton to someone who can speak more personally about hookup culture from an underrepresented perspective. We'd now like to introduce the Deep End's new, totally original segment entitled Jokes Seth Can't Tell. Jokes Rhett Can't Tell. My name is Rhett. Without further ado, Jokes Rhett Can't Tell.
Surprise, bitch. Bet you thought you'd seen the last of me. I'm here to talk about a very special topic, gay people. Here at the Deep End, we love queer people. And we're not just saying that because it increases our profits, because we don't actually make any profits. We actually mean it, unlike your cell phone provider. Oh, AT&T. So now you care about LGBTQ people? So why didn't you respond to any of my texts? In our survey, we found that the average queer student does not feel as included in Northwestern's hookup culture as their straight counterparts, and even more so when it comes to those not in Greek life. Probably given its inherent binary system, but the sheer number of men wearing boat shoes can't help. Society shoves heterosexuality down our throats, and obviously spitters are quitters, but it's like, live in straight sin if you want, just don't do it in front of my children. It's filed nails and U-Hauls, not vineyard vines and unwashed balls. As a result, queer students may not know how to approach relationships or communicate their desires, so many queer students turn to online communities to express themselves and learn to navigate queerness. So despite the lack of sex ed and media representation, queer youth sometimes end up understanding more about their own sexual and romantic identities, vulnerabilities, and needs, and how to communicate such to their partners. Straight people's community in which they may express themselves is the entire fucking world, but for some reason they choose to exclusively express themselves through Stacy's mom. So it can still be difficult for straight students to articulate what they want, how they want it, and just how hard they want it. And this world also hates women. So while straight people may be able to emulate most relationships in the media, they usually convey a sexist dependency and are presented under the light of this constructed binary, which shines down on us with the warm glow of violent misogyny. But violet misogyny sounds kind of serene. Dr. Wade explained why there's a false perception that men prefer casual sex while women seek out relationships. What happens is on most campuses, a small slice of men have control over the social party scene, and that small slice of men tends to be very invested in a particular way of engaging casually sexually. There are spaces that are often fraternity houses, or athletic groups, or all-male friend groups, or organizations. That's where hookup culture is cultivated. In that sense, yes, men have the power to set the terms for sexual engagement with their peers, but that's not all Excuse me. That's not all That's not all That's not all men. Sorry. It's a small slice of men. They tend to be white, have class privilege, be able-bodied, conventionally attractive. You know what? We're just going to show you a picture of Christian Bale in American Psycho. So how do race and class factor into hookup culture? According to Dr. Wade, say you grow up in a privileged household with parents who hold at least some advanced degrees. You have probably been given not only more resources, but the simple reinforcement that the educational trajectory can and maybe should extend beyond undergrad. Poor, working class, and first-gen students tend to see the educational trajectory stopping at a bachelor's or master's. Settling down and having a family feels closer, so they may be more invested in relationships than students who come from richer backgrounds who are disproportionately white. Aspects of Northwestern's culture normalize and enforce a fraternity-centered social scene and make many students numb to the ways misogyny, racism, and homophobia are fundamental in maintaining such institutions. Most who participate, not necessarily in Greek life but in perpetuating this culture more generally, may not realize they're doing so. It's important to ask ourselves why we accept such behavior as standard and actively work to undo internalized hatred and biases, and to continue to support and uplift marginalized communities on campus. Hookup culture in America caters specifically to rich, straight white men, and Northwestern is no different. In fact, only 7.5% of respondents to our survey expressed that they felt very included in Northwestern's hookup culture, and that 7.5% was made up entirely of straight white men. Wait, why am I not hosting?
So what can we do to change this culture on campus? Wow, that tastes so free. The social scene at Northwestern needs to be diversified and less Greek-oriented, and it's up to us to strive for a culture where that can exist. We need to find ways to separate the party scene from gendered spaces so that the power dynamics of hookup culture are more equal. There's no reason to have a one-party system. It never ends well. Just ask Joey Stalin. Although we've outlined numerous ways in which hookup culture is flawed, that's not to say we don't support casual sex. It can be fun, relieve stress, and as Dr. Solomon puts it, may lead to relational self-awareness for some young adults, helping them discover who they are, what they desire, and what they value. On the flip side, if you are someone who isn't interested in casually hooking up and want to be in a relationship, you are not an outlier, but rather you are in the majority. Currently, the rules for sexual engagement are so much about denying any kind of interpersonal connection in an effort to perform disinterest, according to Dr. Lisa Wade. But as we've shown you in the survey results, most people do want an authentic connection with someone. They just don't know how to go about finding it. While we can't help you woo your boo, we can advise you to work up the courage to ask that someone out without relying on alcohol or Tinder. Shoot your shot. Just look at Megan. Sure, she had to settle for a ginger, but now she gets to live in Canada. More than anything, it's important to approach hookups and relationships with a good plan for your mental health. Anything to do with dating, casual or not, is going to involve some rejection, which sucks. Know yourself beforehand so that you can put your needs first and set your boundaries ahead of time. Or don't listen to us, that's okay too. In the meantime, thanks for diving in with us. I'm Rhett Hoskinson. This has been The Deep End. Thanks so much.